Okay, so I've now got a working mic, and I've recorded this like 5 times now with different wrong settings every time, and yeah, talked for 20 minutes and not explained very much. So now at least I've got lots of Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier, examples, and let's just get down to it. So you've got a character, and it's got in Blender, like you've got a character that you want to use in Unity with root motion, so that the animations drive the character moving through world space, and you've got you want root motion, and you want a weapon, like in this specific case, a weapon that has its own animations. So here it's a rifle that has fancy bits on it that move, but it could be like a bow or something, you know, that bends, or some sort of prop that moves that has its own animation. And you want to have one animator that controls everything, as opposed to having one animator for the character and the gun having its own animator, which is a viable option, but it's not as tidy, because then you have to have different animation clips and you have to sync it up inside Unity. So I don't like that. I prefer this way, where you've got the one animator and it animates everything in the character hierarchy inside Unity, and it's all synced up, and you just export it out of Blender. But also, to add even more complication, in this example I've got the character has its own armature inside Blender, but the character also, the weapons have their own armatures, so they have their own action clips. Right, so let's just see this going one more time, just so we can see this is the desired result. Okay, the character goes into the pose, and then the gun has its animation playing, the character has its animation playing, everything syncs up, and okay, seamlessly cut to me back in Blender explaining how this part actually works. So you've got the three armatures, you've got the character, which is driven through world space by the root bone, and we've already discussed the alignment of basic things, but these armatures for the props, those objects are children. They are parented to the root bone of the character armature, the character armature's root bone. So they are parented to that. Inside these rigs, so for example inside the rifle rig has a bunch of bones for the different parts of the rifle. So we've got the rifle root bone, the rifle trigger, and the fins that come out the side of the rifle. And the root bone for the rifle, it has got a copy transforms to the prop bone on the character rig, and this prop bone is just a child of the hand that is holding it. And yeah, in Blender you can have lots of these copy transforms, and the lowest down one is the one that is because they're applied one after the other. So if I had this one here, say, is in the right hand for the rifle, and if I had another one here which was the left hand, and that was turned on, set to 1, then this would be held in the left hand. And so then if I wanted to then have it swap hands, I could turn down the influence on that one. So I thought I should explain that, because this part is kind of important to get everything under the one hierarchy when it's exported. So again, the object itself, the prop, the bow, the rifle, armature object is a child of the root bone on the character, and the root bone of this rig, this armature for the prop, is not a child, is using copy transform bone constraint. So basically the object, the prop armature object, will always be following exactly underneath the character's root bone, but the bones underneath, to which the meshes are parented to, or you could be using the armature deform, but yeah, the meshes follow these bones. So the trigger follows the trigger bone, so when she pulls the trigger, that moves about and animates this armature independently. And again, this could be used for hair or blah 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 blah. But yeah, this part, because I'm too scatterbrained, I forgot to explain how this actually works, because this is quite important. Now we seamlessly cut back, and if you look here, I'm walking, the character moves through the world space. The root node at the bottom of the character that drives the game object through world space will move through world space synced up fine with the character, and the gun is following perfectly. So this is the desired result for root motion animation, and this is the desired result for both the character and the attachment, the prop. Could be hair, could be clothing, could be a character on a horse, you know, and they both have their own armatures inside Blender. It's any instance where you want multiple armatures working in sync, and you want to export it to be controlled by one animator component that has one animation clip that controls everything underneath it. So here's how you do that. So in Blender, we've got the character facing front in the world, and we've got the character's root bone aligned with Unity's coordinates. So Z is forward, Y is up, right, which is not Blender's world axes. And then for the rifle, we've got the rifle armature object, like the character armature object, matching the axes is matching Blender world space. So Y is going in the right direction, X is going in the right direction, and Z is going in the right direction for the object, the armature object for the character, and also for the weapon, the object matches Unity, matches Blender, sorry, and the root bone for the prop, the weapon, is the same. This is different to the character. This is matching Blender's world space. The root bone for the weapon does not have Unity's coordinate system, it has Blender's, because you are going to be parenting this inside Blender, So you want it to all export properly. Okay, so set these back. So yeah, if you do all that right, that's fine. I mean, none of this is an issue. I should caveat this as well. None of this is an issue if you're going to be using generic and you don't want to use humanoid, because then it should export fine. Humanoid is going to mess it up though, because when you create the avatar, it's going to mess around with it, basically, and that's what we're getting around here. And if it's generic, or if you just have the sword as a child of the character's hand, and it's always going to stay in their hand, and they're not going to swap it between hands or holster it, and it's not going to change, you know, in that case, then you wouldn't want it to really be if it was going to swap hands or they're going to holster it, you can't really have it as a child of their hand. You would have to have it under the root bone or somewhere sort of neutral, so that it follows along with the character, but it does not always follow that hand. And since you can't dynamically reparent during the course of an animation, yeah, this is how you do that. So, right, back on track. We've got all this fine, and we export this as the master character with NLA strips. So these are all ticked, and then we export as just the character's name, and then these settings -y forward, which is how it is in Blender there, Z it up, and then we tick NLA strips, and we don't really need all actions, right? And that would be the character's name. So then when we go into Unity, that gives us this, right? Which this works for root motion walking with the character. And we get this because here we set root motion node to the character's rig object and the root bone, right? Again, this is only an issue if you're using humanoid here. The problem here is that on the firing the gun animation, because this is split into NLA strips, the walk works fine, but if this gun was a bow, or I don't know, something that was animated during the walk, as you'll see here from the fire animation, she brings it up, but the fins are not moving on the gun, right? But also, I'll just show you, here's an example that I've exported with generic. So it's still an issue, because in generic it's the same problem. You've exported it as NLA strips, and it's separated. The rifle keyframes are put into the rifle fire NLA strip as they are in Blender, and the character ones are put into the character animation strips. So let's look at that. So that doesn't work with NLA strips is the problem. But in generic, this part works fine, apart from the root motion node stays there and the character moves forward, which is, you know, not great. Also, another bad example, Blue Peter style, that I've made earlier. If you don't tick the root motion node and you export it all, you might get something like this, where the character walks forward and nothing quite matches up as it should do. The gun's bobbing about, and sure, the root motion node is working correctly, but because it's because you haven't told it that the root motion node is the root bone, the gun is offset wrongly, because you know, Unity things. So how do we get around this? Well, for starters, you set under motion the root motion node to the character's root bone, and then in order to get the combination of all these together, when you export from Blender, you select everything, you tick these together, and then you export and you untick NLA strips and you untick that so that it does so that it does a global scene animation. And then I've called this one that combat rifle fire because it's the character plus the rifle, and it's just doing that combined animation clip with just those two, so it won't bother to export anything else. And if we look at this, we'll see there the character does it, as does the gun, and root motion would work as well because we've got this ticked. And then you can plus click this and you can edit, you know, part of it to be an intro, part of it to be a loop. And then also, I should have shown as well, here under rig, this is copying from the master character, the one that has been set up, the avatar, as humanoid. So they're shared avatars, and so that will, if we look in the scene, this one that we're looking at the start that has the working animation on it is the master one. It's not the exported global scene animation, it's retargeting the animations, and it's got all the right tracks so that it works. So that practical example is that if you had a different gun now and you wanted to swap in a different gun visual, you could do, because all of the gun bones and gun tracks, gun keyframes are stored along with the character and the root motion information all under this one animator, and so you don't need to worry about syncing up the gun animator to play the gun animation, or say like a bow. If this character, if this was a medieval thing and the character had a bow, this would probably be easier to understand, or a character on a horse, you know, like drawing back the bow, you have to get the timing on those quite synchronized between when the character pulls the pose to draw back the bow, you need the bow to bend. So if you have an animator on the bow, you would have to have an animation event inside the character draw bow clip that will tell the animator on the bow, start playing your bend bow clip now. And yeah, I mean, it is a perfectly viable way to do it, but I think it's a bit overkill, and it's probably extra performance because you're adding extra animators, extra animation layers, more, just bad for performance. And this way, personally, even though it's a bit of a mission to set up, once you've got it all set up, you can then preview it all together like this and see everything's working as it should do. And so hopefully I've covered everything, because this is one of many attempts to record this, and I think I've got my mic working this time, and I think I've had prepared my bad examples of things that can go wrong. And these have mainly been for me to try and remember how to set this up, but hopefully I've gone through in enough detail and covered, if not all aspects of it, I've covered hopefully it comprehensively enough that somebody coming along who is an animator and is running into one of these problems will get something from this, hopefully. That's my hope. But like I say, it's for me as well, because I'll probably forget this stuff in 6 months' time. Anyway, now I'm really rambling to myself. So if you're watching this and you're somebody else and this has helped you, you know, good, and I'm glad it's helped. And good luck with your animation. And I'm out.